Hi, good morning everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you may be. Welcome back to Life in Lockdown. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Bethany Turner. I'm sure plenty of you already know her, and to say happy release day, because today she is releasing her third book called Hadley, Beckett's Last Dish. And come on, show us the cover, show us the book,
All right,
Bethany.
there we are.
Hadley
There we
Beckett's
are.
that dish. So that releases today. So
Yeah.
I'm super lucky to be able to get on your release day schedule. So
Oh,
congratulations, third book, baby. That's
yes.
exciting.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you. And yay, book release.
Okay, book
now,
release.
now I can sleep. You know how that goes. Like,
I do know how that. Oh, so we'll chat about that a little bit later. But first of all, for readers who know you and those who don't, why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about what kind of books you write and kind of where you are and what your life is like right now under COVID-19.
sure. So I write romantic comedy, and I love writing stories that are very much for a modern generation. Although I'm like, I show my age sometimes with some of my references that I'm like, okay, so they're for the 1980s and 90s generation, but still that's okay. But no, as far as dealing with hard topics in a funny and heartwarming package is kind of what I love to do. So I'm here in Southwest Colorado, which, if anybody knows, the four corners of Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, and Colorado. We're right in the Colorado corner. And so we're in an elevated desert, a high desert at like 6,500 feet. But we're right now in this whole lockdown phase. It's one of those times where you're like, oh yeah, that's the beauty of a small town. You kind of, we're dealing with it too. We've had, I think, 16 confirmed cases of COVID, and which, in a small community, that 16 seems like 1,600. I think we have 7,000 people in this town or something like that. But really, we're blessed in that maybe not quite as affected as a lot of places, certainly not as the major metropolitan areas. But we're dealing with kids at home. My kiddos are 17 and 14, so teenage boys, 11th grade and 8th grade, trying to finish up those years and try to make a run of it, because they're out of school for the year, as I think pretty much every kid in the world is at this point. I don't know, a few exceptions, but so dealing with that. And my husband he's in radio, so he's been considered essential because he's media. So he goes in some, but he's able to do a lot of work from home. So yeah, we're all just kind of living in our confined space like everybody else, and loving the moments when we get to get out and get a breath of fresh air and a little bit of sunshine.
So what has, apart from, your kiddos being home all the time, what else have been, I guess, the most significant changes for you since, say January, before the global pandemic struck?
From before. Well, I'm on staff of a church, and we're the largest church in our area, and very much kind of growing and building and up and coming and all these different things. But we had not mastered, we hadn't even started the online church experience before all of this. It was always we're going to get there. This is part of the vision and where we're heading, and as far as outreach and all of that. But we hadn't gotten there yet. And then suddenly, literally from one day to the next, it was, we got to get online. we have to make this happen. And so we had a week where we were still allowed to be working in a little bit, but most of the staff was working from home, and it was just a very few of us kind of left. And it was just, we felt like pioneers, really. again, it's awful. It's not something you ever wish for, but it was also really exciting. And this adrenaline of we have to figure this out and we've got to figure it out now. And so, yeah, now we've got online worship experiences, and we've been reaching people who we never had the opportunity to reach before, at all. And so I'd say that's been the biggest change, is just literally from one week to the next, church looked completely different. And I know that's been the case worldwide. And I've just really honestly been so excited by the way so many churches have risen to the occasion of that. But then, for me personally and what that's kind of meant, the biggest changes have been where I'm sitting right now. It's like, okay, if I were facing back that way, that's my desk where I was an author before. Now it's my desk where I work for the church. And, I'm just in a corner of my bedroom here. And that's my little office space, which was great for writing and all that. But now it's combining the two jobs, 10 to 12 hours every day. I'm in this little corner. And, some people have it worse, so I'm not complaining. But the first week of that was testing my sanity a little bit, and kind of this feeling of, okay, I'm never going to be able to write again, because how am I ever going to figure out how to be creative again when now this is my everything space and all of that. But just like everything, we adjust. Doesn't mean I want it to last forever, but we adjust.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same for me. My commute is now a foot from my bed to a chair, actually, because we went into lockdown so fast there was no time to even buy a thing like a desk. And my kiddos have taken over the one table in our house for their schoolwork, which is kind of downstairs in the middle of all of our family stuff. So I couldn't work there anyway, because they see me appearing as mummy's out to play. and,
yes.
And so I was doing rewrites on Start With Me, and so I would spend 8-9 hours in that chair doing my day job, and then I'd go downstairs and I'd feed the kids and put them to bed, and then I'd sit back down on the chair and I'd swap out the laptops, and then I'd spend 2-3 hours doing edits or rewrites. And it's like I never leave. I never leave work ever.
It feels it. I mean, I don't know about you, but would you agree? Like it feels. It felt like it just sapped all the creativity out of me to begin with. I mean, seriously, I don't know how else to say it. It was almost like I actually told one friend, like very dramatically, but I was just like, it's killed my spirit. It's kind of how I was feeling. Like I'm not gonna survive, and and trying to find little things, like literally what I'm doing right now, of facing the other way, is the only way I've been able to find some sanity. It's not just, I mean, that's not a beautiful background or anything. It's not much better than what's on the other side. It's not that so much. It's just, I just got to face the other way to get into a different headspace.
Yeah.
And it's really as simple as that. And, it works to varying degrees of success, but it's just, again, who'd have ever thought we'd be in this situation dealing with these things?
I was really, I felt really grateful that I was in the middle of edits when this all happened, because I had, I had a book on a page that I was working with. If I had been, in a process where I was actually having to write new content, I don't think I would have written for at least a month, because there's just no way I could have seen myself being able to immerse myself into some kind of imaginary world when the real world was so hard and so uncertain, and everything was just changing all of the time. And I know from talking with friends who have been in that part of the process, like I haven't found anyone who for at least the first few weeks did not really struggle to be able to find the creative space that they needed. Because you just, nothing is what it is, and it feels so weird to be trying to, create new characters in a world that doesn't actually exist at the moment.
Right.
It may not ever exist again.
Exactly. And I, like I'm sure every other author in the world went through thoughts of, oh, maybe I write a COVID romance. And, just kind of like, what do I do? And actually, I had to travel. I had one last trip to a conference in Dallas. No, Nashville, but I had to pass through Dallas. And it was right at the beginning. I mean, obviously, travel had not been shut down. It was just the beginning, little bits, but lots of people were wearing masks at the Dallas airport. And of course, like I said, living in my little small town here, it hadn't hit us in that way at all. So that was culture shock. But as I was walking through that airport, it was just like, okay, there were some romances. I mean, picturing the face mask and nobody, talking through and the creative juices were flowing then, but that was before it became reality for me.
Yeah.
Then it almost felt like, not to minimize it, but just for me personally, it almost felt more like I was watching a movie at that point. It was like, this is weird, but now it's like, oh no, this is life. And yeah, so what is our new world? And I think it's so for the world, I mean, I know it varies depending on when you live. I really think for Americans, the closest thing we've experienced to this in our lifetimes is 9/11. And not that this, I mean, it's complete apples and oranges, but at the same time, it's like there is before 9/11, there is after 9/11, and America was never the same again. And knowing that this is very much going to be that same way, and knowing that we can come out of this, hopefully a lot of the good things that have been developed, hopefully they stick around or we build on them or whatever the case may be. But absolutely, we live in a different world. And yeah, I haven't wrapped my mind around that yet fully. I keep trying because I keep thinking too, it's like, well, when I go back to writing, like we're talking about, it's so easy to say, won't it be nice when I can get back into the office and this is my writing space again and all these different things. But that's going to be an adjustment just like it was. It's like we've gotten used to things. We've created these boundaries that now, how much is that going to mess us up? It's not like we're just going to bounce back. So I don't know. I'm really not a doom and gloom person, but I'm very much like okay, I'm preparing myself for the worst and then anything else will be great,
Yeah.
And so just thinking through all of that and trying to be prepared for it so that it doesn't rock me any more than it has to.
So, talking about writing and books, can you tell us a little bit about Hadley Beckett and what your process? I guess what your process was in terms of writing that story. Tell us a little bit about the story and how it feels to be bringing it out into this world that we have right now.
Oh goodness, yeah. Well, the process of writing it was like, okay, I had this pitch to my editor that I loved, she loved, and it was simply two celebrity chefs, not just chefs, but like chefs on TV. Two celebrity chefs, complete polar opposites. The guy, Max Kavanaugh, is a complete jerk. The woman, Hadley Beckett, is sweet Southern belle, known for her hometown values and Southern girl, all of this stuff. And they're forced to work together. Max has a major breakdown on national television, which kind of sends his career plummeting and sends Hadley's career skyrocketing because of that. And then Max and Hadley are forced back together in an attempt for Max to revive his career, and not knowing, do we trust Max or do we not? Is he using her? Is he not? All of that. So that was the basic pitch, and that is the basic book now. But somewhere along in the process, I lost that. It was the hardest writing I've ever done in my life, and I wish I could tell you why, but I don't fully know. But somewhere along the line, I disliked Max so much that I did not want to spend time with him. I could not find a way to redeem him. All our characters have flaws, or some more than others, but it's really the first time I've written a guy or a character who he's not the bad guy. I mean, he's not my villain. He's my hero, and I cannot stand him. He's an awful guy when we first meet him. And so it's like, so I kept pushing further and further out in the writing of like trying to get Hadley and Max together, which obviously, again, I write romantic comedies. Everybody knows that's where we're heading. But I couldn't get there. And I would push it and push it and push it. And the draft I finally turned into my editor. It was, I mean, their first cast was on the last page, which if anyone, anyone who's read any of my books might know that that's not my norm. I like writing kisses.
Standard.
Yeah, it's like not my standard. So it was just, but it was like, okay, I finally found a way to force them together. Here you go, the end. I mean, that's basically how I felt.
And we're done. And I'm done with this. Goodbye.
We're done. Have a happy life. I never want to see you again. I mean, that's really how I
Except it won't be that happy because Hadley, you actually deserve better, but you have to end up with him because that was the pitch.
Exactly. I'm like, oh, maybe, yeah, I won't show you getting married, so there's still hope. Maybe you'll just date him a while. We'll find just somebody better down the road. I mean, that is how it felt. I hated him. And it was so weird. And so I turned it into my editor. And she's like, I mean, she took a while to get back to me. Just the normal process of a while. But by the time she got back to me, she said, basically, yeah, this is not the book you pitched to me. I said, I know, but I don't know what to do about it. And so we had an hour-long conversation. Some things started to click in place, and then I had to do a total rewrite in 2 weeks. And it was probably the most powerful writing experience I've ever had was those 2 weeks, because enough had clicked, for one thing, that is like, okay, I can at least see some points. And one big thing that I changed was just skipping over a little bit of Max being awful. It's an alternating point of view book and of Max and Hadley. And it started alternating back and forth from the beginning. She said, don't show him for a few chapters. I was like, and I don't know why that was, I mean, it's like, oh, duh, I should have thought of that, but I hadn't. And it was such a game changer of, okay, we don't know what he's dealing with off the scenes right now. We're not lost in his every horrible thought. So that was a game changer. But then really more than anything, I just kind of had to give it to God and say, I don't know how I'm going to write this book in 2 weeks. Please work your magic. That sounds weird, God, work your magic, but you know what I mean. Please just work in magnificent ways. And he did. And I think just also no sleep and hysterics, and it's almost, I mentioned, all this actually played in my favor because I couldn't overthink it as much. I just had to write. And by the end, I mean, I will say, I'm not saying this for promotional purposes, I will say with 100% honesty and confidence, Max Kavanaugh is my favorite hero I have ever written. I love him, who he turns out to be. And I didn't water down who he is in the beginning. He's awful when we meet him, but it was like being able to discover who he really was and then write him through that process. Whole different thing. And so yeah, that was kind of my process and of that. And just as far as, launching a book into this world, I really don't know what it's going to look like. And I'm choosing, and I'm working very hard. I'm having to choose every day to embrace that, because my natural tendency is I like to control all the details. That's my personality, and I feel very in control of nothing. And I keep having to remind myself, yeah, think about how bad this book was when you were trying to control these details. And then think about how it turned around for you once you let go. And so I'm just kind of trying to treat launch the same way, more successful with that thought process some days than others. But, having to cancel events and like in-person events and all of that has been hard. And I know so many authors, not to mention every other career out there, dealing with things like that. But one thing I've really seen too is the way the community that we work and live in, of Christian fiction authors different authors, different readers, all these different groups, they've come together in some really remarkable ways. And we're getting some really fun new community, I guess. And everyone's been really supportive, not just of me, although, you know, like my launch team has been amazing and all these different things, but just so much support from readers and booksellers and reviewers and all these different things for the authors who are having launches during this time. And that's been, I think, wonderful. I mean, I don't know what that's going to look like for me or whatever, but I have just loved seeing that sense of community developing and just having to trust it's okay. It's going to get in the hands of the people who need to read it. I don't have any less control over it than I ever have. I just feel like I have less control. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think there's definitely been a sense of we're all in this together. And I mean, there's always been that sense to a degree in our writing community, but this is kind of just, you know, notched it up to the next level, because, you know, everyone, no matter where we are in the world, find ourselves in really similar places when it comes to, you know, writing or releasing books, and, you know, suddenly not having all of the things that we ordinarily, you know, would have leaned on for something like this. Are you working on anything new, or are you taking a break?
I actually, I have another manuscript done.
Whoa!
That will be.
It's amazing.
I wish I could say I was really productive in the last 6 months, or no, I actually wrote this book about 6 years ago.
Wow.
The one that's done, and that'll actually be my next one coming out. So I'll have details, official details that I can share soon about that. But yeah, it's actually a story that I wrote before The Secret Life of Sarah Hallenbeck was even done. I started on this other book, and but it was, I guess, like 2013, so 6 to 7 years. And I've always loved the story. I believe in the story, but it was one of those things, you know, we all have our closet story. I mean, our drawer or the closet or wherever, these stories that it's like they're going away and they may never see the light of day. But yeah, my agent thankfully loves this story too, and she never let me bury it.
Yeah.
And so it's actually going to be the next one coming out. So I'll be excited to share details about that soon. But it's a romantic comedy, and it's pretty fun. It takes place over 10 years.
Wow.
So, which I know we're going to have to edit so many of the references, because seriously, I write so much pop culture, and again, it was 2014. Talk about your different world.
I've scored 6 years.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, those are not relevant references anymore. Let's revisit that. So yeah, but that's what's coming next.
Yeah, so I had that too. I mean, my first ever manuscript that I wrote will never see the light of day. But I have actually pillaged a couple of chapters out of it for other books. So, you know, it still has its uses.
Nice.
But the second one that I wrote became my 5th book, One Thing I Know, that released last year. So
wow.
Yeah, so that was so I wrote that. So I wrote that in 2012, and
okay.
kind of rewrote it and kind of packaged it as kind of a set of 3, so to speak. And no, whatever, I guess 2018, 2017, and yeah, there we go. So yeah, that was the book that signed me with my agent after I met him at ACFW in 2012, and we shopped it around at the time, and it got some interest from publishers, but you know how the book world is. Sometimes things land, sometimes they don't, sometimes they land 5 years later.
Yeah.
So yeah, I absolutely know what it's like to be digging something out and being like, all right, we got to move this forward a little bit.
Well, and you talk about having stolen chapters for other books and from that first manuscript and things like that. As I was recently, because I hadn't even read this book that'll be the next one, I hadn't even read it in probably 2 years, 3 years maybe. And so I was kind of just skimming through, getting some things in line and different stuff. And I was blown away and could not believe how many things. I was like, okay. I had Katie McCaffrey say that. Oh, Sarah Hollenbeck said that. Oh, Hadley Beckett just said that. I didn't even realize I stole all my own stuff. I'm like, well, poo. I used all the good lines and
You
other
saw the good lines already. Now I got to think of new good lines.
yeah, I'm like, man, so I do have work to do. But yeah, I'm excited to see what that one ends up being, because yeah, it's gonna have to go through a lot of changes, I think, before it fully sees the light of day, but that'll be coming before too long.
Yay. And so, final two questions.
Awesome.
What do you miss the most right now, and what is keeping you sane right now?
You know, I think what I miss most is Friends. The TV show. No, not really. That's what's keeping me sane. Welcome back. No. Um, I I'm really lucky and blessed in that a lot of my best friends are people I work with at the church. I mean, we work together, we serve together, we do life together. And so I do get to see them like once a week when we're filming services, a few of them, and all of that. But like the church family and the different things like that. Yeah, I miss that. It hasn't been too hard for me like on extended family really, because my parents and my sister, they're across the country anyway, and we've actually stayed in better touch because now Zoom is such a thing, and all these different things. But yeah, friends I miss. um as far as what's keeping me sane, um I think the first thing it is really just that I happen to really like my husband and my kids. And
Win.
that's
Definitely a win.
it is a win. And I feel like, I mean, this has been good for me in that regard of I don't usually think of it that way. It's like, of course I love my husband and my kids, and of course I like them. But how it is. We all do right now. It's like when you're forced to spend all your time with them. It's like, okay, do I really want to spend all my time with them? And we all need our little bits of alone time and stuff. But as it turns out, I actually really like them, and we've really had fun finding new ways to connect and spend time together, and and just kind of rediscover each other in some ways, I guess. So that's what's keeping me sane for sure.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you.
We are going to be, or I'm going to be, giving away a copy of Hadley Beckett's Next Dish. So, what is the question that you would like people to answer to be in to win?
I would like people to tell us who is their favorite celebrity chef.
Here we go,
So
everyone. Nice and
there you
easy,
go.
hopefully. Who is your favorite celebrity chef to be in to win a copy of Bethany's new book, fresh off the press on release week? So just comment to be in to win, and I will call a winner on the weekend. Thank you so much for your time. It was so lovely to see you.
Thank you. It's lovely to see you.